Three, two, one, and we're live.
Live.
All right. Well, today on this episode of um, VillageMade podcast, I have a special guest with me. Thank you for coming and thank you for your time. I my first two episodes, I kind of introduced people, but I didn't introduce them fully. But I understand that you can introduce yourself better than I can. So let's go ahead and start with that. Can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, okay. My name is Andy Tuisavura, and I'm a little bit older than you. So we grew up in Laie. I'm Fijian. I live here in Provo now, but yeah, we grew up in Laie, went to Koku school. Yeah.
Nice. So let's just start and just jump in off of that. You said you're Fijian
I am.
and you said you grew up in Laie.
Yes.
So Fijian and your last name is Damuni. Do you know the meaning behind your last name?
Well, that's my mom's maiden name, Damuni.
Okay,
My
sorry.
last name is
Tuisavura.
Tuisavura.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah. Tuisavura, like the literal translation is the king has risen or the king has appeared. That savura means to rise or to appear, and then tui. So yeah, the king has risen, the king has appeared. Fijians have they use their middle name as their last name. So going down the line, the last name gets dropped off. And I think tracing back all the way like to as far back as we have record of, it would have been Vakumbao. Yeah, but ours is Tuisavura.
That's interesting. Yeah. Sorry, and then the Damuni, do you know that side as well?
I don't know what Damuni means, but that's my mom's maiden name. So that's my grandfather's last name. He's from Mokani in Fiji. I don't know what the meaning of the name is, but yeah, that's where that came from.
And the migration from Fiji to Hawaii, which side of the family migrated and who?
Both. So my parents met in Laie.
Nice.
Yeah. So my grandpa came. He wasn't the first. I believe my uncle, Ratu Isireli Radule, was the first to come over for PCC to build the Fijian village. And then my grandparents, and I don't know if they were members at the time, the Radules. And then my grandpa, Tata Mosi Damuni, he wanted to come over as well. And he was he was brought over to help build the village. And he was only brought over on like a 3-year contract or something. And my grandma didn't even want to come with him. Because it was for the LDS church and they weren't LDS. And I think they had 3 kids at the time. My mom, my Auntie Salah, and my Uncle Lavani were the 3 that were born in Fiji. And and he really wanted to do it. I mean, he's way into his culture. So he really wanted to do it. They came and then I think they just kept extending his contract. And because they were in a predominantly LDS community, or all LDS, all Mormons, my mom then would run away to go to primary and stuff, and they eventually got baptized. And then I think my grandparents also got baptized, and then they ended up just staying and making it a permanent thing. And my grandma also, from my dad's mom, and my grandfather on my dad's side, they also came over for PCC. So my mom grew up all her life in Laie, and then, from when she was a little girl. And then when my dad came to join his family, because he didn't come with his family at first, he stayed in Fiji. And then, in fact, he went to school in Tonga. He went to school at Leona. And then when he came over after serving a mission, when he came over to Hawaii, that's when he and my mom met there in Laie. But that's what it was, the PCC that brought them over to migrate.
Gotcha. And growing up in Laie for you, how was that? What was childhood like for you?
Oh, it was everything. I think because my dad was in the military, so my older 3 siblings were born in Hawaii. I was actually born on a military base in California, and then we lived in California for I came to Laie for a few years, and then we went, just my first grade year, I think. But we went back, and that's where, till I was 10 years old, and then we came back to Laie. But after, like once we came back to Laie at that time, we were there for the rest of the time, and it was everything. There was always something. I always go home and I always feel sad that like I feel like the kids don't have the activities that we had. I mean, just we had Turkey Bowl, we had Christmas Bowl. The whole month of July was like Laie days, just because Junior IU, he did all that stuff for our community. And then when there wasn't that going on, then there was like a church activity, a church dance, and if there wasn't a church activity, there was a school function. So there was always something. And I always joke with my friends when I go back now, they all have kids. I'm like, these kids don't even know how to have fun. Like nobody eggs each other anymore on Halloween. I always tell them that we should egg their kids one of these Halloweens. Like we should dress up and do it, because that's the kind of stuff that we did. We had no worries running around. It was really, really free. Play in the streets till it's dark. Just, yeah, it was everything. I'm grateful for my childhood in Laie. Yeah.
And how many siblings do you have?
There are 6 of us. Yeah. So I have a brother and then a sister. And then, so my brother, my sister, another brother, and then myself, and then 2 younger brothers.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And growing up, I guess, in Laie, can you speak on the diversity there, the cultural diversity?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's so diverse that like you almost think that you're another culture because you're just immersed in all these cultures. It's like kind of like its own little melting pot. But it's just cool because you get, we grew up doing May Day and then we're right there at PCC, and then just being your neighbors in your neighbors' homes, you get to learn about everybody's cultures and everybody's backgrounds. I love the diversity in Laie because then now, like at the age I am now, when something happens in somebody else's culture, because I grew up around that culture, I kind of feel a tie to it. Like when we were just talking about the Mauna thing. And at first I didn't really want to get involved. I just felt like it was controversy. And if you have an opinion and somebody else doesn't like your opinion, then it's just, starts this bashing. So I stayed away from it. But when I went to the Mauna, there's just this pool, like, this is where you're from. This Hawaii is the land that gave my grandparents a place and a better life from where they came from. If it wasn't for Hawaii, if it wasn't for PCC being brought here, then we wouldn't have the gospel. We wouldn't have this life in America. So then I kind of felt like, I wasn't doing my job. I wasn't giving back to the Mauna the way that it gave to us. But I feel like because it's so diverse, there's so many cultures, you learn to respect each other, the differences. I think one of the biggest things that like shocked me when I first came to the mainland was like Samoans and Tongans, they didn't get along.
Right.
Or like they would get offended if somebody called something somebody, because that's in Hawaii, like everybody's just, it doesn't matter what you are, we all still got along. And so that always kind of makes me sad. But I think being able to be raised in that diversity just helps you to kind of connect to people on their level and from their side of things.
I know you mentioned earlier before we started the podcast that you wanted to be Samoan.
Yeah, like growing up.
Taupo.
Yeah.
Can you talk on that?
I hung around with all Samoan girls, right? So we had we put the letters of our name together and we made up a Samoan name. Like, I just wanted to be Samoan. I wanted to be Miss Taupo. I still try to do Sivas at every function, because I think I'm Samoan. And but I loved their culture. And even, there was things that the Tongan people did. Like you guys had the Tongan community meeting after every year where you guys would, at BYU, where they would give out money for the who got good grades and stuff like that. And I was like, I want to go to a community meeting like that, like there was much less Fijians than there were Tongans and Samoans. And because when my grandparents first came to Laie, the Ngalea'is took them in. So we've always kind of gravitated towards that side, and we have grown up with a strong Samoan influence from them, and they're the best of the best when it comes to taupos. And so I just always wanted to dance like Alberta, dance like Val. Like, but I always wanted to be Samoan. I always wanted to be like that. Like I always wanted to have that culture. And I mean, there was, like I said, even things that the Tongans did that I was like, oh, I want to do that. But so it's just cool to be able to see it. And even if I wasn't directly involved in it, like to still be able to learn just from watching it. Yeah.
Yeah, just going back to what you said, there's so many things to do in the community. Like We Are Samoa.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and
We Are
then
Samoa.
the Tongans had that Tongan Day thing
Yeah.
before they, that quit. But,
Yeah.
You can always have that influence around
Yeah.
you. I like that. So a question I have for you, are culture and identity tied together?
Culture and identity, are they tied together? I think that like your culture, I don't think that they're tied together, because I think that your culture is who you are, but your identity is more of like because when we were growing up, I didn't this is gonna sound so like okay, but I didn't even like Fijians. Like I didn't want to go to Fijian functions. I wanted to identify as a Samoan, but my culture was that I was Fijian. So I think your identity, I mean, you can tell yourself your identity is what you choose for yourself and what you decide in your mind, or how you feel, or who you want to be. But your culture is really who you are. That's where you're rooted, and you can't deny culture. People can argue you out of your identity, and people can tell you like, no, you're not this or you're not that because of this, this, and this. But nobody can ever tell you that you're not your culture, because that's where your roots are.
Right. So growing up, what were some of the Fijian, like some of the Fijian culture that you were taught to you in the home?
Just to be respectful, like when you walk, you take your shoes off. When you walk through a place, you say chilo. I think in Tongan it's tulo.
Did you speak Fijian in the home?
No, I didn't even speak Fijian until I got my mission call to serve in Fiji. But yeah, I'm serious. I was trying to learn Samoan. And people actually laugh, because my brothers, they like know all the words to all the Samoan songs. We didn't speak Fijian in the home. My parents spoke it to each other. The adults spoke it to each other, but they never spoke it to us. And I don't know why. So I understood very, very little of it, but I didn't speak it at all. But just the culture itself, like there was a tradition. I don't know if it's a tradition, but it's something they do in Fiji. Like when you're done eating, my mom would bring like a bucket of warm water to the table for my dad to wash his hands there. And I thought that was just something my mom did till I went to Fiji, and it's done at every dinner table. Like all of the homes that we had dinner in, all of the wives do that, and before we could leave the table, we didn't speak it, but that was one thing my parents taught us, was that before we leave the table, we have to say thank you for the food and ask to be excused. You can't just get up and leave the table. You have to, and we had to say it in Fijian. So that's one thing I know my parents taught us how to do and say when we were young, And then of course the boy and girl thing, like just being respectful, and but that was one of the things we learned growing up, was you say thank you and ask for permission to be excused. Yeah.
That's cool. So growing up, was it hard to find your identity?
I don't think it was hard, because it was right there in front of me. My grandpa was the chief at the Fijian village. My grandma made Fijian costumes, Fijian laies. We were like known as the Fijian family, I think still to this day, if you ask people, if anybody meets a Fijian, like the first thing, like anybody from Laie meets a Fijian, one of the first things they'll ask that person is, oh, do you know the Damunis? That's
For sure.
Who are, so it wasn't hard. It was right there. I think I just chose not to recognize it. So I was hard head more than the identity itself being hard. It wasn't It wasn't hard to find. It was there. Yeah.
Were there any situations where you found yourself not feeling too Fijian or feeling more, like Fijian?
Um, I think I didn't feel not Fijian enough until I was around other Fijians, and mostly in Fiji. Like when I couldn't speak as well as them, or I mean, Fijians all when you sit, you cross your legs, and like long periods of times, and I just can't. Like I'm questioning, like, am I really Fijian because I can't cross my legs, when I sit? But that was that was when I first got there. I didn't feel Fijian enough. I remember when I first. So my first experience in Fiji was on my mission, and when I first got there, I was like, we drove into where my first area was, and it was like this long dirt road, and there was still like shacks built out of like metal, just what's the word? I can't even think of what the word is, but I was just looking around, and it was culture shock for me, even being Fijian, to be in Fiji and see like the way of life. It was still culture shock for me. And I was like, oh no, I didn't sign up for this. There's no running water. We have to pump our own water. Like we didn't have electricity in the house. It was candles or solar panels. And I just felt like I don't speak the language well enough. I don't understand these people. Like, yeah, they're completely different than I am. Even as a Fijian person, I just still felt I was too American for the actual culture. Until I stayed in that area for like 6 months. And then after that, I was like, nobody can tell me anything. I'm Fijian, but yeah.
Which is actually kind of funny because, growing up wanting to be Samoan,
Yeah.
or, playing the Samoan
Yeah.
part. And then it comes time to go on a mission and get called to Fiji.
Fiji. Yeah.
What was your initial thoughts when you opened your call and saw Fiji?
Have you ever seen my my video?
I haven't.
Oh, I'll tag you in it. But I didn't even read the
Your
call.
eyes just went straight to the mission.
Well, my sister-in-law moved the paper, so I had the envelope covering, and I was gonna go like this, but I had I was holding my call this way, and I had the envelope this way, and my sister-in-law, I think she just wanted to twist it so it was the same way, so that I could go down. And when she twisted it, I just saw Fiji Suva, and I just threw like both hands in the air, and I screamed. And luckily, somebody was recording because I don't think anybody was ready for it. But I screamed, I'm going to Fiji. And I remember having conversations with people like 2 weeks before that. One of my Tongan friends, he was here for conference, I think. But we all went to a dance, and he asked, like, oh, he knew I was waiting for my call. And he asked, where do you want to go? And I was like, honestly, I hope I go to Fiji. But like, I think my sister was like, oh, I had a dream you're going to Australia. And people were like, what if you get called to the Laie Visitor Center and you get to serve at PCC, like, and then I was like, oh my gosh, what if I get called to Provo, So just because I was here, and I was like, but there was a huge part of me that was like, man, that would be so cool if I could go to Fiji. And so when I saw it, I just, like, for me, it was like for me, that was one of the one of the moments in my life where I was for sure that God is real. Like, and he knows me because he sent me to Fiji. Like, he knew that not just the people in Fiji that I helped, he knew that not just they needed me, but he knew that I needed them. So it was cool. Yeah, I'll never forget it.
What was a favorite memory, or one of your favorite memories from your mission?
From my mission, I think my the highlight of I loved my whole mission. Like every area I served in, I loved everything. There was a purpose for me in every area, but the highlight of my whole mission was one of my investigators. His name is Brother Bull, and it was teaching him the gospel. I didn't have a companion at the time, so I was just on my own, and they would just put ward members with me. And I don't know, there was like not enough sisters in the mission or something, but that was one of the times that I felt like closest to the Savior. Yeah. And besides that, besides helping him and like actually seeing his conversion, like that was like the golden conversion. besides seeing that conversion, because I kind of feel like that was the peak of my mission. Like that had to happen for me at a time when I was strongest and most, like, yeah, I was at my highest spiritual peak. So I kind of feel like everything else good that happened on my mission was kind of an appendage to that. But he was like it was like that story, when your best friend left and then he wasn't gonna have the gospel and you were like, I'm gonna find you. Right. And I found my friend. So he was I found my friend moment. Yeah, but besides that, it was being reunited with my dad's sister. That was my first area. My dad's sister moved back to Fiji when we were, I think I was like in maybe 6th grade. I don't know. I was young, but so it had been 15 or 16 years. And we pulled in and I asked one of the members, like in my very broken Fijian, if they knew this lady, and they're like, oh, that's her house right there. And so I walked and I went to the front door, and in Fiji, that's very disrespectful. You have to come to the side door. Uh-huh. Yeah, if you come to the front door, that's like a super disrespectful thing. And so in Fiji, they call it susumandrai, like you don't know your culture. I went to the front door and I was just standing at the front door. And so when she came, she had her hand on her hip, she had her glasses on, she like looked down, and it just so happened that I had lost my badge. So she didn't see a badge. She had no idea who I was. She hasn't seen me for 16 years. And then I think she looked at my companion and she saw my companion's badge. And when she saw my companion's badge, she looked back at me and she just started crying. And she passed away a few years later. But so I was probably one of the only. No, I mean, some of my other cousins got to see her again after she moved back, but I probably got to see her most recently before, out of all my cousins, before she had passed. And I always hold that secret that I got to have that 6 months with her in that area. So those are my two most cherished memories, was watching Brother Bull's conversion and seeing my Auntie Miti again.
Wow, that's awesome. I just saw, that you posted about Brother Bull too. Yeah, passing away. Yeah. So
he passed away a few years ago, and
you flew home or flew back for that. Yeah. I
flew there. That was one of the times, like I said, that my bank account was like, you have no business, and I was like, no, stay in your lane. And I had to go. And even like, I love his wife. His wife is Samoan, and she was a member. And so I love her. I've stayed close with her and their family, but yeah, Brother Bull was a highlight of my mission for sure.
Awesome. Yeah. That's cool. So when you got back from your mission, you just got back into your job or into working and moving out here to Utah?
Yeah. So when I got back from my mission, actually, I was able to serve in the Hawaii mission.
Oh.
Yeah. I served,
a mini mission or like a 6-week?
No, like they reset me apart as a full-time because they didn't have enough sisters or something. So that was cool. But so I was in Hawaii for a little bit, and then I traveled for a little bit. I think it was like 2 months. I went to Vegas, went to my sister in Kentucky, and then eventually ended up here in Utah. Yeah. And then I worked a few jobs. And then that was like March. And then at the end of that year, 2012, I got hired at JetBlue, and that's what I've been doing since. Yeah.
Gotcha. I guess getting into like finding our purpose or our passions in life, are there some do you think you found like your purpose or you found a passion?
I think that
you can get into?
Yeah. I think just recently when I came back from Fiji, I think I tried to deny that that's where I wanted to go back to, like, cause I was like, I'm American. I grew up in America. This is where I'm going to live for the rest of my life. But there was always something that always pulled me back to Fiji. And so there's a huge part of me that feels like that's where my purpose is, and it's, God's timing, it's coming, and it gets closer and closer. And so I've been really like, I always say when 2020 started, like I YOLO'd all last century, from 2010 to 2020, I just YOLO'd that whole century. That was kind of the theme of my life. And I was really unintentional with my time. And I didn't apply the things that I knew I should, like goal setting and things like that. I kind of just I traveled a lot. I just went with whatever felt right at the time. But I think over the last year or two, I kind of have felt like there's something for me to go do in Fiji, in regards to, like, I don't know, the church. I don't know what the full purpose is yet, but I think it has something to do with like the church and women and women empowerment or helping somewhere. I think that there's a second mission there for me, and I've tried to put myself in. I'm working on some things right now to allow myself to be in a position to be ready when the time is ready.
So there's I follow you on Facebook, and one of the things that I saw that I wanted to ask you on the podcast and talk to you about was this domestic violence awareness that you're bringing out for not only women, but especially Fijian women. And I just saw that you were in Fiji. Mm-hmm. You did something with like walking or some kind of awareness. Was that?
Yeah,
can you talk
it was
about
like I walked a mile in her shoes.
Yeah.
So with social media, I think domestic violence has always kind of been an issue and an unaddressed issue in, I don't know, I don't dare to say Polynesia, or you don't really talk about that stuff. It's like taboo. Like if it happens, it's like you just close your eyes like you didn't see it, and then the next day it's done.
Right.
And I grew up around it, and I saw it in my family and in other families, and I still see it today in like my friends' relationships, and it's crazy because it's people that when I first started at my Soar page, like the people that would inbox me their stories, like I had no idea. Like I'm like, you went through that? And these are people that, we see weekly at church, or girls my age, girls younger than me. And I was like, but they had no voice. And if they spoke up for themselves or if they defended themselves, they were all afraid of the consequences, And so they didn't speak. And I think that that's how it's always been, is you don't talk about it, you don't tell. And your voice is kept quiet until it's silenced in death. But I think with the platform of social media and more coverage, more and more stories are coming out. And so I started just last year, I started following like a Fiji news page, or, I started joining these Fiji groups just because I go to Fiji so often, that I think that I know what's going on over there. But it was like every few weeks, every other month, there was a news report of a murder, of a domestic violence murder. And they were young girls. Like one of the ones I did, there was two sisters and their first cousin, and they all were murdered last year by their boyfriend. And some, the details in the account of it, it's so gruesome, and it's so like how can somebody kill somebody like this in cold blood, like, how do you do that? But I just kind of felt sad because I was like, I feel like the news comes out, people read their stories, there's an uproar for a little bit, and then people, forget their names. And I think for me last year, when I saw the amount, by the time I had like first decided like I'm going to do something, like I'm going to start some type of movement. I'm going to put myself out there and be a voice. The death toll last year was already at 8. And actually I should say 9, because one of the girls was pregnant. And so, and 2 of them, in fact, I was in Fiji when it happened. I was in Fiji, and we all did what Fijians do at night, sit around a bowl, right? And the next day, they were driving me to the airport, and there was a murder scene. And it was actually one of the spots that I had walked to. But yeah, at the point when I had decided I was going to be a voice for women who had no voice, there was already, the death toll was already up to 8. And it kind of just took me back to my mission. It took me back to like when we would go visit families. I always knew. And I don't know if it was a spirit of discernment just because I was set apart, or if it was like my intuition as a female. And I was a little bit older. I was 26 when I went on my mission. So I was a little bit older. And I feel like I don't know, I resonated with the women more than the younger crowd because of my age. But I always knew when I would walk into a home, I could always tell if this lady was just beat the night before, you know. Yeah. I could see it in her eyes. I could hear it in her voice. Like her mouth would still shake when she spoke. And in fact, I went back to one of my areas just this past December, and we went past one of the houses. And even when we passed that house, I looked at the house and it was just like this rush of emotion, you know, like that was one of the houses that I would walk in, and she didn't want to turn us away because in the Fijian culture, you don't turn away God's servants. And so she would serve us in her pain, and she would allow us to come in. But on the days that she was just abused the night before, she wouldn't make eye contact. You know, she wouldn't look up. There was no confidence, you could tell she was very, very insecure. And that was kind of what I had remembered when I started reading about, I went back, you know, and I was reading, like searching all of these names, all of these just in 1 year, looking at stats. And so this past December, when I went back to Fiji, I decided I compiled a list with the help of one of my friends that I served my mission with. She still lives there in Fiji. I messaged her and I was like, can you help me find all of the names? I think I have some, but you know, can you find them on your end and the location of where their bodies were found? And then she mapped out a mile. Her name is Serrana. She mapped out from where their body was found a mile out from there. And so one day I wanted to do all, by the time I got to Fiji, then it was up to 11. Wow. Or 12, including the baby, the girl that was pregnant. It was up to 12. And then on New Year's Eve, I was still there. There was one more. So there was 13 altogether last year. But she mapped out, you know, a mile from each location. And so I saw this thing that people had done called a mile. You know, I walked a mile in her shoes. And it was mostly they were getting men to walk the mile in memory of women who are either raped or domestic abuse, domestic violence, something of that. And I was like, oh my gosh, I want to do that. That would be cool to walk to these spots in Fiji, you know? So we had that all set up. And there was other people who were supposed to walk with me. And there was even a girl who had agreed to do a video interview. And then at the last minute, I think she got a little bit scared. And there were actually people that I had hit up that were like, oh, sorry, we can't talk about it. You know, like their families told them they were not allowed to go public about their aunt's murder or their aunt's death, which is fine because I would never want to put anybody in a dangerous situation or whatever. But so when I went to Fiji, I just was like, and I wasn't going to do it. Like we got there, and when I arrive in Nandi, I usually fly to Suva. But I had two friends come pick me up so that we could drive back to Suva because one of the stops was along the way in Singatoka, and the rest of them were mostly in Suva. So I had them pick me up, and then as we're driving, he's like trying to convince me, like, no, it's Andy, it's raining. Like, let's just drive. We're tired, you know, your flight got in so early. I'm like, no, this is why you guys picked me up, because we said we were going to walk. And so I just bought flowers and we just walked a mile. The first one, there was no flowers, but we walked a mile. I, did a little video clip dedicated to the girl who was found at that spot. And then when I got to Suva, I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. And I went to the market. I bought a bunch of flowers one morning, and it was crazy because the day that we got there, the 2 days that I was there in Suva, it was raining nonstop. And so I was like, I'm not going to be able to walk because the Fiji rain is like like build a ship because you're going to have to, row yourself out of this rain. But that day that I had decided I was going to just go to town and walk to as many spots as I could before the rain came. It didn't rain. It rained, I think when I did my first one, it rained just a little bit, but like enough to cool the day down. And then I was like, oh, let me see if I can do a second one. Let me see if I can do a third one. But just walking that mile, like for me, I can never say that I know what it's like to be in a domestic violence relationship because I've never been like abused by a partner, but I just wanted other people to see that if they are in one, that there is an outlet, there's a way out. And if you need the help, like we can figure it out for you and we can do what we have to do. And I just wanted I wanted Fijian men to see that this is not okay. Like you're killing the women that are supposed to like replenish your seed, and like you're killing off generations every time you kill a woman. And then I just wanted women to know, like, if you need a voice, I'll be your voice. And so it was like walking those miles where it was hot but it was so cool because then when I would run into people around Fiji, like what surprised me was that there was actually people in Fiji that were like, wow, I didn't know that about this and this. And I didn't know that those two were sisters. And I didn't know that one was pregnant. And that's what I wanted to do is like, I want you guys to know that these lives that were taken, that this was somebody's sister and this was somebody's daughter and this was somebody's mother and now they're gone. And I want you guys to not forget that when she was killed, she was carrying a child. And, when she was killed, her mom was already suffering her own sister's loss. And that's what I wanted, was for people to realize what the news didn't tell them so that they don't forget and that those girls who died don't have to die in vain. So
what gave you the confidence to want your voice to be heard? Because people usually want to start something but they don't have the courage to go through with it, but you actually did. So what gave you that courage?
I think I thought on it for a long time. Like I thought on it for a long time. I wanted some cool name, and then I talked to a bunch of people about it, and I think the two people that I talked to about it, Tessie and my sister Alamita, like anything I tell them I want to do, they're like, you can do it. They're my hype team. A lot of my friends are my hype team. I just have a good, strong circle, and everybody's always, but I think I ran the idea by like Pare and Tessie, and they were like, oh my gosh, you should do it. And there was all this feedback and it kind of fueled the fire within me. But one night I was asleep, and then the name, like I just, in my sleep, I heard the name Soar. And I was like, so I woke up, and then like I just saw, silently overcoming abusive relationships. Like, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's the name. Like, that's going to be the name of my platform it's going to be Soar. Like, for these women because my biggest thing was how silent people have to be. I didn't want that anymore. I don't want anybody to have to stay silent if they can speak up without getting hurt anymore, And so then when that happened, then it was like almost October, which is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Right. And so I was like, it's now or never. So I posted like one thing, I think it's just, they say the journey to 1,000 steps begins with a single step. Yep. I just posted one thing, and then I posted another thing. And then pretty soon that's when I started getting in, private messages just from girls who have gone through it. And these are girls who are like my close friends, and like my relatives, I know I have relatives who are survivors. And I think that's what gave me the confidence, is just that I knew it wasn't about me, because I think that's a vulnerable position to put yourself in, to want to be the voice for something that's so taboo to be spoken about. Because you don't know if people are going to hate you for speaking up, and you don't know if people are going to like make fun of you or chastise you or whatever. But I think the confidence really came from the purpose of it all was bigger than myself, was bigger than than who I was. And so I was representing family, I was representing friends, I was representing people that I had never met, but for a cause bigger than my pride. So I had to be willing to be made fun of, and I had to be willing to be mocked, like, so stupid, look at her walking all the way around Suva, like I had to be willing, like if that was the feedback I was going to receive, which I didn't. I actually got a very good feedback, and I was it was received, like what I did and what I posted was all received really well. But I had to put myself out there in risking that I could have been received differently. But I had to be willing to do it because my purpose was bigger than my pride. Like it's not so bad to be made fun of if it's going to save somebody's life.
Nice. I guess what message do you have for those girls that are in abusive relationships right now? And is there anything that you can or they can do to reach out to you or to help you can help them with?
Yeah, I mean, if anybody sees this interview and they are in an abusive relationship, anything I can do to help, I'm willing to do. But I think that that's the one thing that I wished all women understood that are in abusive relationships, because I think that from the outside looking in, it's really easy to say, well, you're stupid, why do you stay? He did it the first time. Like that's something that I heard growing up, like, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me, and that's kind of, I think that at first with domestic violence and relationships, that a lot of girls don't speak because they're afraid that people are going to tell them it's their own fault. And they believe it because their abuser mentally grooms them at first, and the abuser tells them it's their fault. Like,
right.
I'm sorry, but you made me mad. And so that's why I did that, and I won't do it again, but don't make me mad. Don't say this, or don't question me, or don't, whatever, why ever men hit women, and sometimes women hit men too. I mean, sometimes it's vice versa, but it's more so
right.
Females who are normally the victims. But if I had anything to say to them, I would want them to know that it's not their fault and that there's always a way out, and it might seem impossible, but it's just a matter of, I think Sifa said, doing the next right thing.
Right.
You made the choice to go back. That was a wrong choice. You made the choice to forgive. That was a wrong choice. Do the next right thing and tell your closest friend, tell your parents, ask for the help. Don't be prideful. Because I think sometimes too, girls are prideful. Like they don't want to ask for the help, but just there's always help. There's always a way out. No matter what the abuser tells you, no matter what you feel the world has shown you, there's always a way out. And if you want that way out, you have to reach. You don't have to have all the strength. Some girls think that they have to do it on their own, All you have to do is reach. And I'm sure there will be 10 hands reaching back to pull you out of it if that's the situation that you're in. There's more help waiting and ready for you when you just reach. So right. Just don't think that that hope is so lost that the only way out is to stay there until you're dead. Don't think that it's better to come home from a failed relationship than it is to come home in a body bag. So don't think that you have to keep yourself there at the abuser's disposal, because you can get help. Yeah.
You mentioned that you have a page on or Soar page. Is
that
a Facebook page or?
It's on Instagram.
Instagram.
Yeah, I think it's
and people can reach you there.
Yeah, at the Soar Factor. Yeah, the Soar Factor.
Cool.
SOAR Factor. Yeah, the Soar
Nice.
Factor.
I guess looking at it from my side, or like a male perspective, what can we do as a culture? What can we do as a people to stop this, because I feel like maybe it's generational.
Yes.
And so what can we do, from like, I guess, our generation to stop, that the abuse from happening, and stop just that mindset that it is happening and that it can happen, and passing that on.
I think a quote that I've heard a lot recently, or I've seen posted a lot recently, is that hurt people hurt people. And I think that there's this stigma in the Polynesian culture that men can't have emotion, so they bottle up their emotion, and then, or they don't want to say that something has hurt them, or they don't want to say that they're suffering from something. And so then their energy is redirected, it's the wrong way. And it just goes on for generations, because men see that this is how their father loved their mother. And they, and they saw that was how their father loved their mother. And so you think that abuse is a part of love, when it's not at all. Like, love should never hurt on any level, not mentally, not emotionally, not physically. And if it hurts, it's not love. Like, don't confuse the two, But I think for Polynesian men, or just any men that are in that situation, or women who are in that situation, is like, you have to heal yourself before, because if not, you just project this emotion onto somebody else that's not even the cause of it, and that for sure won't solve it, but being willing to talk about it. I mean, if you have anger issues, go to therapy. Like, don't, you know what I mean? Being willing to ask for the help, to being willing to admit that you need the help. Because I think a lot of time we're like, no, I don't even need the help. I don't need to see it. Nobody wants to see a therapist, right? Because if you see a therapist, that means you have problems. Like, something's wrong with you. Yeah, but it's not. I mean, if you had the flu, you wouldn't stay home and not go to the doctor, right? You would, unless you have doTERRA oils, but you would want to go get medicated. And I think that we view, and I used to not believe in mental illness. I don't know.
On that. Mental illness in the Polynesian community.
Yeah, I never believed in it. So when people were like, I'm depressed, I was like, oh, grow up. Like, how can you be depressed? Like, we're Polynesian and we're strong in this. And then I think I would go through like phases, and like looking back, I'm like, wait, now I can look back and I'm like, dang, was I depressed? Like, now I can recognize that. But before, I was just like, if somebody showed emotion of some sort because they were going through depression, it was like, oh, she's so drama, or like, get out of your feelings, grow up, like, man up, but like, and so I didn't believe in it before. And even, I've never been diagnosed with depression, but I've gone through times where I've been like sadder than what's normal, and nobody wants to see a therapist, because I think I went through a bad depression. I think that's when I first was like, wait, this is actually depression. When I came home from my mission, like the postpartum, like the PTSD, like I said postpartum, that's totally not post-traumatic. Okay. The post-traumatic stage of like being separated from this life that you were living to this completely different world. Yeah. It was stressful, and it made, it takes a part of you. And you don't have to go on a mission to experience PTSD. There's tons of things when you go from one life-changing event to another that emotions are involved and trauma's involved. And we just want to suppress it because we want to appear strong, and we want to appear like we got this. And then, and when you're going through a hard time, I feel like that's the first thing that people say to other people is like, oh, be strong, you got this. Like, like nobody ever tells you it's okay to cry, but I think that as a culture, we have to recognize that it is okay to have feelings, and it is okay to not know what to do with those emotions. And it is okay to want to seek professional help. And it is okay to want to heal and want to break the curses. Like, figure out what your generational trauma is. Figure out what the generational curse is. Figure out what the generational violence, what the cycle was in your family. Figure it out. Find the root cause of it and cut it at the root. You know, be willing. And I think going back and finding the generational trauma and the generational curses, you're going to open a lot of doors that's going to bring out a lot of things that may not be okay with other people who are not ready for those conversations and who are not ready to address that this is a generational issue. Because there's still people like, I mean, there's people in every family who are like, no, that's disrespectful. Don't you talk about that. Don't talk back to me. You have no respect bringing that up. You know, like there's people in every family that are like that. And there's people who are like, why can't you just mind your own business? Stay in your lane. And then there's people who are like, no, let's figure this out.
Right.
And you have to be ready and willing to open those doors. And kind of, it might be a can of worms and you might hurt a lot of feelings at first, but it's like, you've got to clean it out.
That's where the healing happens.
That's where the healing happens. Right. Is when you figure out where it happened and you open that door and you clean it out. It's like opening up a wound, you know, like, of course it's going to hurt. Yeah. It's going to hurt.
You got to experience all that pain.
Yeah. And you
have to experience it all.
Yeah. And it's like
in order for you to heal.
Nothing's clean at first. It's all dirty, you know, but when you get it all out, when you get it medicated and you work on it, and then it heals, it's like it was never there. And I think that as a culture, that's what we have to be willing to do. And men, I just think that men have to be okay with saying they can do this too. Like they're allowed to feel like they want to heal. You don't have to be the big tough guy all the time.
Yeah, I feel it's like society is the one telling them that they can't. They have to be tough.
Yeah.
Just put if something happens, just put dirt on it, carry on.
Yeah.
But I feel like maybe that's some of the culture that we brought from the islands.
Yeah.
Whereas now that we're living in America, with the American culture, you learn to use your words.
Yeah.
And so using your words, you learn how to like express yourself, tell other people how you feel. And that way you can, you can work through your problems and then just like you said, cut it at the root,
Yeah.
So this generation, like, everything can stop, know. And so I kind of feel passionate about this too, just this generational hurt, that the cycle that continues. And so
and I feel like too, like that's that even is what causes the kind of disconnect or the struggle is finding the median between the American culture and the Polynesian culture, because and how Americans view Polynesia versus how Polynesians view American. And finding the balance is kind of a struggle at first because you don't want to I don't want to be too Palangi.
One way or the other.
Yeah. And then people say this, I'm not. But when you find that balance, when you're able to heal with the tools that we have here and still be the person that you are in your culture, when you find that balance, it's a beautiful place to be.
I think for me, like the best example or the best place to start is I love you,
Yeah.
I mean, not telling all my parents, but I didn't hear that too often growing up. I'm not sure about you. I don't want to speak for you, but it wasn't until recently, these past couple of years, that I hear I love you more often.
Yeah.
And for for us trying to start this way, or trying to stop this generational things from happening, just start with that I love you and expressing yourself that way. I think that's a good way to start.
I think too, I mean, on top of I love you is I'm sorry.
That's where the pride gets in the way. I mean, I'm sure we all have as Polynesians.
Yeah, because I think we're
all get stubborn
if you say I love you, it just fixes it. But I think when you say I'm sorry, it's like you're actually acknowledging
I like that.
I messed up and I take responsibility and I'm going to fix it, And I've kind of become just over the past few years, because before I'd be I didn't even like to say sorry myself. And I would never say sorry to even if I knew I was wrong, I'm well, they asked for it, But I've tried to be more aware of saying sorry. And in becoming that way, I've been more more firm in requiring apologies that are owed to me. Because, sometimes they tell you just get over it. They're not going to say sorry. No, because that's what carries the cycle on.
Right.
if there's an apology that's owed, it needs to happen, or else we just continue the cycle. And I've only recently become like that. But before, yeah, I was like, they're not saying sorry. I'm not saying sorry. We're just going to move on and like keep this, sweep it under the rug and move on. But that's not healthy.
Yeah.
So
I agree with this whole thing with mental health. It's been a subject that's come up a lot.
Yeah.
In the news and just more recently. So I also feel like as Polynesians, we need to start healing ourselves.
Yeah.
And start healing our own.
Yeah.
So that stuff like this, abuse doesn't happen, rape doesn't happen, and so we just need to cut it off. But yeah, I'm just grateful that you're here to talk about that. So would you say that you found your passion in trying to be a voice for domestic violence and stuff like that?
Yeah.
Is that a passion or?
It is. Yeah. I feel like, I think I have a passion of just helping people. I don't know if that's a passion, but I like almost, yeah, like I want to be a healer. I want to be a fixer. I want, but I think that I definitely feel like my passion is to be a leader or be a voice in the breakthrough of breaking generational traumas for women, and more so Fijian women. Yeah.
It's cool too that you said that your purpose is in Fiji,
Mm-hmm.
and so your passion and your purpose could possibly be tied together.
Yeah.
And maybe one day returning, or I don't know if you want to return or go back to
I
Fiji,
do.
but
Yeah.
That's cool. Man, I guess what do you think the world can learn from Polynesians? What do we have to offer the world?
Honestly, when I lived in Fiji, like the one thing I noticed is that people live till they're so old. Like the life expectancy rate or whatever it's called. Like there was legit like 80-year-olds, 85-year-olds going to the farm every day, and not like it's not like it's like from Haula to where the church farm is, Laie to where, and you drive there. Like the walk in the areas that I was in, it's like 1 hour down and then 1 hour up the mountain, like the farms were far. And I would always see old men, pregnant women, like on the horse carrying their taro, But the one thing that I learned in Fiji is that all this stuff that we have in America, I think like it's not necessary to survival. And I appreciated that so much about being in Fiji, and I'm sure that's how it is in Tonga and in Samoa, is how they live off the land and how they're one with the land, and how like they say, like we came from dirt, like they are a part of the land and the land is a part of them, and so there's no stress. I think that sometimes because of the world we live in, we tell ourselves that we need certain things, right, but we don't need them. And we have taught ourselves to become reliant and dependent on non-essential things. And we've made ourselves believe that these non-essentials are essentials and that they're necessary. And so in our search in our desire to obtain those things, we just create extra stress for ourselves. Like whether it's financial or work or, physical work or just emotional or mental stress. Yeah, I think that Polynesia can really teach people just how to be in tune with what is really essential to life and how to survive off of those things. And when all of that is, coupled with the love they have and the order that they have, because there's still like the order that things work in the villages in Fiji, they still know who the chief is, and they still, it's a sad world we live in. I don't want to get into politics, but it kind of is like we live in a world where like half the people hate our president, and for whatever reason. I'm not saying you should or you shouldn't. I'm not going into that, but I'm just saying like that's a sad world to live in, where you don't even like the person who's leading you, but in Fiji, you still respect the chiefs, and you still follow protocol. And because of that, they have this order, and they have this peace that comes with the order.
Right.
And they still follow tradition and culture, and things are still done in a certain way.
Unity brought by following all that.
There is. And then that being combined with them, living off the land and just being one with the land and respecting the land. Like I remember we went to Fiji like 2 years ago, and we were going to go to, I was going to take my brothers and sisters to, it's a rainforest called Tuisavura, and it's a rainforest with all these waterfalls. And my dad probably just already knew, like these dang American kids. And the thing he told my brothers was, he like, in all seriousness, he's like, look, when you guys are walking through the forest, be respectful, be quiet, don't make noise. And it was like, why? Who's gonna hear us? We're in the forest, But that was his way of saying, like, respect the land, because when you go in and you act a fool, or you act like you weren't taught better, anything could happen. Slip and fall, hit your head, drown. But that's how the accidents happen, is when you don't show respect to the land, and But I think that's something that Polynesians do so well, is they respect the land, and they are one with the land, and all of that. There's just no stress. And maybe, I don't know if they stress out. I don't know, because I wasn't raised over there, and I'm not them. But like when I look at them and I see how healthy they are at the age that they are, compared to the ones here, and
Right.
all of that, like, people associate gout with Polynesians, but like the ones in Polynesia, they're so healthy. And I just think that that's what we could learn from Polynesians, is just how to live happy, stress-free lives, knowing how to prioritize and do things, in order. That happiness, I think, money can't buy.
A lot of the things that we have is just first world problems. Huh?
Yeah, a lot, yeah.
Gotcha. So I guess just your vision and what you see yourself doing in the next 10 years. What do you have in mind? And if you don't mind sharing, I guess.
Yeah, I have big goals.
Or, I
have big goals, but I think
in relation to this, I guess.
Yeah,
not your personal goals, but
my vision, ultimately, I want to be able to fund a women's shelter, a women's domestic abuse shelter in Fiji. That's what I want to do, and I'm hoping to do it sooner than 10 years. Speak it into existence, right? Exactly. But that there's a bunch of things I'm working on, like I said, and I think at first I started with the end in mind, so I was like trying to figure out how to do this right away, and then I had to kind of backpedal and figure out what steps I had to get to that big thing. But that's my ultimate goal, is to do whatever I have to do to be able to fund a women's shelter, and to just give women a safe space somewhere, even if they come for one night and they go back to their husband the next day. But just for them, one night is but for them to know that they're safe for that night, that's what I want to do. So.
Well, I guess just going back to what you said earlier, and just doing the next right thing.
Yeah.
The next right thing will lead you to, the end goal.
Yeah.
So, I guess for you, if you could give back to your community, what would you do, or how would you do that? How would you do that?
Are we talking about Laie?
Yeah.
If I could give,
sorry.
If I could give back to Laie, I would hope to be able. I think Junior IU still does a lot of the activities, but I would hope to be able. Well, first of all, buy Laie back, take the turbines down.
I agree.
I would hope that I could be an example, one, but two, give the kids that are up and coming there now, because I feel like they don't have the direction that we had. I I would want to be able to provide the direction and the confidence and the safe space that they need to come to with their fears in order to find their confidence a lot earlier than I found it, and in order to find their direction a lot earlier than they found it. That's for the kids, so that they have that same direction that we had, and that same kind of safe guidance. And then, yeah, I think one of the things that I love about being from Laie is when there is a wedding or a funeral or some type of event, is how everybody comes together. So in a way, just kind of, last week we were in Oregon at Hiram's son's funeral, and then you can't make the pain go away for people that are going through it. But I think being able to be there and provide some type of service or some help with some of the work
can help ease
that pain. You carry the burden, that's giving back in a sense, is showing up. There's so many times when that's one of my favorite thing. Everybody hates funerals, but Laie funerals are my favorite thing because, and I'm sure, Tongan funerals too, when somebody passes away and immediately people are like, okay, we're going to, group messages go out, text messages go out, phone calls go out. This is your assignment. This is the night that we're going to go. This is the night that we're going to show up. This is the night that we're going to serve. And that being able to give back that way is something that I enjoy, being amongst the camaraderie and the fellowship. Of course, when it's time to go, it's sad, but in that sense, we can constantly give back, just showing up and being there in anybody's time of need. And I think a lot of people sometimes are like, oh, I only had this to give and I only had this to give. And something that has been said more so than before is that, people, vocalize it more now, is it doesn't matter how much you give, but you're here. We would rather have you come and show your face and have your presence, because that's what's, I think, the most valuable at the end of the day, is that you're present. And I think that that's what I'm trying to say, is that I would give my presence back. I would want kids growing up in Laie to know that if they needed help, they could come to us. And I would want families who have migrated away from Laie to know that if they were to go through a trial or a hardship, that we would be here. So just to be present for each other in anyone's time of need.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And it just comes back to the cultural diversity there. It doesn't matter what culture you are.
Yeah.
Hiram was there. Hiram at the funeral, you just seen Fijians and Tongans and Samoans all show up, and so I thought that was cool. And whether you're a class of 05 or a class, Ngaleai fam, or and you're all part of that. And so there's different groups that all come in and contribute to making that, to helping out in that. So that's cool. Well, I guess thank you for your time, and thank you for sharing a little bit of your experiences and sharing some of your knowledge with us, and just spreading this awareness,
Disclaimer, I don't have a degree in anything, so everything I shared was my own thoughts and opinions, so don't quote me on any of it if it's wrong, but those are my feelings about what I've learned through my own experience. So thanks.
And then just like what we're talking about, we can be manly enough to talk about, or step up and talk about if you have any differences with whatever your opinion was, but we need to talk about it instead of continuing on that generation. And so I guess I just have some questions to end with.
Okay.
And these are just questions, fun questions, just to get a little bit more. What takes up too much of your time?
What? Twitter, social media.
What do you wish you knew more about?
My culture. I feel like I probably know the most about the Fijian culture in my family, but I wish I knew. I know that there's a whole ocean of knowledge out there, and I wish I knew more about it.
What inspires you?
What inspires me? I think I'm inspired by people like you, just people that that aren't afraid to follow their dreams and to take the first step and be, what's the word? To be leaders. Yeah, pave the way. Anybody who doesn't throw in the towel. Life is hard. And life is hard for everybody in any regard, in any, whatever your situation is. That's kind of what I've learned. Nobody's situation is more superior or inferior or harder or not harder than the next, because that's you in your own lane. Yeah. So anybody who doesn't throw in the towel, who doesn't make excuses and continues to pave the way. I'm inspired by trendsetters. Yeah.
I like that. Let's just not be the victims. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's just live out of our circumstances and live our best lives. Cool. So speaking of learning, what are some things you had to unlearn?
One thing I had to unlearn was that you cannot communicate in silence. Like I was like a person, like if I get mad, I'm just not going to talk to you, you know? And I can hold grudges for like ever. So I had to unlearn, that was a very unhealthy behavior, but I had to unlearn not talking about things. I had to unlearn that. I think that's something that I've been working on. And I had to unlearn that I'm not always right. I can go back and there's probably a whole Red Sea of people who can tell you that I always thought I was always right. And I would always try to find a way to prove myself right in every argument. But I had to unlearn that, that I don't know it all.
I like that. What's your favorite book?
Oh, I'm not a reader.
Oh, okay.
But
Book of Mormon.
well, I when I was on my mission, I think that's probably the time that I read the most when I was on my mission. And I read Jesus the Christ, and that's a solid book. I love the Book of Mormon too, but yeah.
If you could spend a day with someone dead or alive, who would it be?
If I could spend the day with somebody that has passed away, I would have an ice cream date at the BYU Seasiders with my Auntie Boy. Yeah, I never got to say goodbye to her, but that was our thing, ice cream dates. So I
like that.
That's what I would do.
Yeah, that's cool. That's a cool memory. What's special about the place you grew up?
Everything. Laie is one of a kind. I always said Laie was our own world because like you didn't have to leave Laie for anything, you know. Right. We had our grocery store, we had our school, we had Foodland. That's the grocery store. We had the church right there. Like you don't even have to go past the highway for any of that. Because you can get to Foodland from the back road if anybody wants to tell me I'm wrong.
Restaurants or like foods.
Yeah, we had the restaurants.
Within our community,
we had a doctor's office there. There was banks. There was a movie theater, places to swim, places to play, Laie Park. There's just we didn't have to leave Laie to do anything. Everything we needed was right there for us, you know. BYU had the library, the snack bar, the gym, the Aloha Center. So I think most because of that, because you didn't have to leave to do any of that, to have any of that, everybody just it caused us to be so close knit that everybody is family, you know. And
especially when you move here.
Yeah, and then they're still your family, you know. So I think that's what's most special is it's not just a place. They're not just your neighbors. Yeah, like this is your village. Yep. This is your village. This is the village that raised you, right? This is your village and this is your family. And this is who you need to have, and that's who has you. And yeah, it's just my aunt one time she told me, like, she would always tell people, the friends you make in college, like the friends you have in high school are cool, but the friends you make in college are going to be your friends for life. Those are going to be your best friends. And then she said, and that applies to everybody except Laie and Koku and Hola people. Like they're the only ones who are still best friends with their friends from high school, you know? And I think the coolest thing is always... like, we don't even address each other. Like when we go to functions, I was with Leon and Fui one time, and even Fui was like, how do you guys know what year everybody graduated? Like, cause we call each other by, you're known by what year you graduated, you know? And he was so impressed by it. He's like, I know like 3 of my classmates and you guys are over here like 96. 98, you know. I'm like, I don't know. You just grow up knowing who's what
Yeah.
class, and
It's funny that you
Yeah.
said that he was impressed. I know some people that hate on
Yeah.
it. No, I'm just kidding. That's funny. So what have you only recently formed an opinion about?
Well, I think only recently I've formed this strong opinion about being against domestic violence and mental health. Only recently, yeah.
What's the luckiest thing that's happened to you?
This is the first thing that came to my mind.
Go for it.
Which, well, I mean, okay. Besides, anyway, I got to be on the front. So like the Fiji rugby team came to Utah, and there was just a whole airport full of people there, and I looked so tore up, but I inserted myself into a picture somehow, and it was my picture with the team that ended up on the front cover of the Fiji newspaper, the national Fiji newspaper, which I don't know if that's a lucky thing, but I love Fiji rugby. Like, I love Fiji rugby. So being able to be in that spotlight that week I felt like was a pretty lucky thing.
What song would guarantee to make you dance?
Oh, Leandi by Fiji.
What are you most looking forward to in the next 10 years? Well, I guess I kind of asked this earlier, but
Just whatever is in store for me. I think, like, before I used to think there was no plan, but now that I've started being intentional about my time, I can feel that there are bigger things happening. So before, I didn't believe, all my friends were getting married and all my friends were having kids. And so because it wasn't happening for me, I was like, I don't have a purpose. I'm just here to kind of be everybody's entertainment and everybody's babysitter and whatever and whatnot. But now that I've started to be intentional about my time and actually work towards goals, I'm just excited to see them come to fruition and stuff.
Nice.
Yeah.
What could you give a 40-minute presentation on with no preparation?
With no preparation? I think I could give a 40-minute, I don't know, Polynesian dance. Yeah.
Yep.
I can teach people how to do Samoan Sivas.
What hobby would you get into if time and money weren't an issue?
I think I would travel more and like not just travel, and be there for 2 days for something and come back, but I would travel and I would learn things about those places, like the foods, the culture. Yeah. Try to learn new languages, just the basics in countries that are much different than my own culture or America where I was raised.
What is your number one destination right now?
Like where I want to go?
Yeah. What would be it?
If I could go anywhere right now, I kind of want to go to Greece. Yeah.
Santorini, huh?
Yeah.
That's cool. When people come to you for help, what do they usually want help with?
Everything. I do it all. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, family, always, I'll babysit anybody's kid. The funny thing is that, like, my married friends will constantly talk to me about their marriage. And I mean, you would think, I don't know. Yeah. I think maybe it's just because I'm an outsider looking in. So I'm kind of able to reason with them more than they are able to reason with themselves because they're in their own personal feelings. But I think, like, with my friends, yeah, a lot of it is just, that's what the help is if people are going through stuff with their marriages, which it's crazy because I give some good advice. I mean, I don't mean to toot my own horn, but
good to know. Good to know.
And then other than that, I think it's just like babysitting or, I don't know, making curry.
Mm-hmm. What is something you think everyone should do at least once in their life?
At least once in your life. I think that you should, what's the word? You should, like, whatever your fear is, if you have a prejudice of some sort,
Face it.
Face it, you know, whether you're afraid of like a person of a certain race, or whether you're afraid of a place, or whether you're afraid of even just the food, like you should go to that, hang out with that person at least once that you're afraid of, you know, eat this food at least once that you say you can't eat, go to this place that you're scared of, you know, do face that fear, whatever it is, do it at least once. If it's jumping off a cliff, jump off the cliff, you know, into water, of course, but whatever it is that you feel is bigger than you, find a way to face it at least once. Yeah.
Great. I like that.
Yeah.
That's good advice. And then the last one is, which of your scars has the best story behind it?
I don't have very many scars, but I went to Fiji last year and I let my friend talk me into getting a tattoo, and I got the tattoo. And I thought it was so cool, you know, because they were like, wow, she's so strong. Like, because it's kind of a big tattoo, but 2-3 days later, like my whole leg was tore apart. Like I thought I was going to die. So my whole leg is scarred up from that tattoo.
Oh, like an infection?
Yeah. It was pretty bad. But I had to, if you see my pictures from that trip, you wouldn't know what I was going through, because I was like in the kayak, like I would just
doing the most.
I would
take
the medicine I need to take, clean my leg, and then I, you know, wrap my leg. I was in the waterfalls, I was in the kayak, I was just everywhere. I flew home, I flew back to Hawaii. So you would never guess that I was going through it, but whenever I see it, I'm like, oh my gosh, you are such an idiot, Andy. Like, and I don't know why that's I don't have very many scars, but that's a pretty cool story that I thought that's something I'll never do again, but
awesome.
It was a good lesson to learn. Yeah.
Cool. Well, congratulations. You finished your first podcast.
Thanks. Thank you for having me.
Well, this is the VillageMade podcast.